Has the world gone crazy? Life is difficult. When you need help, where do you turn?
Are you willing? Are you willing to let him blow on the coals of your heart? Are you willing? Are you willing to ignite that flame? To let him blow and ignite that flame and set you on fire? And set you on fire to consume this county, to consume this state, to consume this world.
Welcome to Christian Impact, impacting your life with spiritual truth. I am Dr. Kelly Blanton, and I'm sharing practical truths in the Bible that can truly change your life.
Today is February 11th, 2026. We are continuing our February series, Following the Call, and today's message is Strength Renewed. And this is a very interesting message because we're going to talk about the call, and we're going to talk about the strength that God gives us in this calling, in this following of Him. But you can almost think of this message as like a two-part message. I know sometimes people preach in three-part outlines or five-part outlines. This year, I am taking the revised lectionary. These is scriptures that have been selected out to be read weekly in churches, and that's, hundreds of years old. I pause at saying that because it's been revised so many times that it's probably not that old. But the point is that the scriptures have already been pre-selected and have been used. They're it's like a 3-year reading plan through the Bible. It's for churches. Most of your more traditional churches use it. I like to use it occasionally, every once in a while. It's been a few years since I've done this, but I take it and I call it almost like prophetic preaching. And when I say prophetic, I don't mean like, the prophetic movement is really getting a lot of bad publicity because you've got false prophets out there that are not really using a gifting. They're just calling people that's really, hurting the name. But what I mean by prophetic preaching is that I'm taking these scripture passages and I'm ministering what I feel like God's put on my heart, and we're drawing from these passages for these topics. And so I like it. I like teaching from the scriptures closely, verse by verse, but there are also many topics that need to be addressed. And sometimes if you're just doing a book study, there are certain topics that you're not really addressing that need to be addressed, especially in timely manners. And yes, if you preach the Bible verse by verse, you'll eventually get to them. But when you get to them, it may be too late for people in your congregation or your people you're ministering to actually hear the message that they needed to hear earlier because they were having issues with a topic. And so there's always pros and cons in every method. But that's where I'm coming from this. And so it sometimes helps you understand, where did you get this from this passage? Well, we're talking about the calling. We're going to talk about God renewing our strength. And you're going to see this in these two things, because we're not going to talk about the calling and how this fits in until the end of the message. So please stay to the end. We're going to start with Isaiah 40, and we're going to talk about strengthening, God strengthening us. And this is a very famous passage. We're going to look at Isaiah chapter 40, verses 21 through 33. It says, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been declared to you from the beginning? Have you not understood since the foundation of the earth? He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. Its dwellers like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. He brings the princes to nothing and makes the rulers of the earth meaningless. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner have their stems taken root in the ground, he blows on them and they wither, and the whirlwind sweeps them away like stubble. To whom will you liken me? Or who is my equal? Asked the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high. Who created all these? He leads forth the starry host by number. He calls each one by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and why do you assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my claim is ignored by my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is an everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow weary. His understanding is beyond searching out. He gives power to the faint and increases the strength of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. And forgive me, I've been a little stopped up. I've been ill. It's all the weather changes and things, and it's yeah. I guess it's just an old fashioned cold because I haven't run a fever or anything. It's almost gone, but occasionally you get the drainage and sniffly. So forgive me for that. But we're almost back to 100% health. Let's get back into this passage here. Starts off, do you not know? Have you not heard? It's been declared since the beginning. What? And it goes into this characteristics, the power of who our God is. He is so big. He sits enthroned the earth. We're like little grasshoppers. The heavens, he stretches out like a curtain. It's the greatness of our God. And he goes on. He says, "Who will you liken me? Who is my equal?" Says the Holy One. Again, Isaiah, when he wrote these words down, this is when many people were worshiping demons, false idols, just whatever. And here's God saying, "Who's like me? What idol, what demon are you going to compare to me? I look at who I am. Who are you making equal?" Even today, we have idols and false worship all over the place today, but it's not we make little wooden statues and we have our little temples. Although some people still do that, and I think there's a section of our world that's wanting to go back to that. But there, even in our quote secular society, we worship things. We have idols, and God is saying, are you making that equal to me? Is it like me? Did it do this? And he goes on. He talks about how he put forth all the stars, the starry host. He calls each one by name. None of them are missing. And then it goes on that can we hide our ways? Is my way hidden from the Lord? Man, Christians, how often do we do things that we intellectually can say we know God sees us, but then we do things and we're doing it because we don't think he's really watching. We don't think because he's not physically there. Verse 28, do you not know? Have you not heard? It's a repeat. How do we know this? The Lord is everlasting. He is the creator. He doesn't grow tired. He doesn't grow weary. And his understanding, what he knows is beyond our searching out. Even if we search for all knowledge, I've got a couple of friends and they're really in the scientific community. They're always searching, always asking questions. But they're somewhat deceived because they feel like that someday when they gain enough knowledge, we'll just figure this out. We'll figure God out and we'll figure all this out when we just get enough knowledge in our technology level. And the truth is that's a lie. We will never attain to his knowledge. We will never understand where he's at. Yes, we can increase, but no matter how much we increase, it's always short. We will never attain who he is. And this is where it gets real interesting. It says he gives power to the faint. Ask this question, what does faint mean? What does it mean when you faint? It's not that you're weak. Strong men can faint. Fainting occurs when you reach the end of your ability and you can go no further. It's when your endurance gives out. Everyone, no matter who you are, has a breaking point where you cannot go any further, and you back out, and that's a faint. I know oftentimes we think of a faint as person passes out on the ground, like they faint, but when your endurance can't go any further, you got some big power lifter lifting 500 pounds, and the minute he goes, he's fainted. He can't go any further. This is that God gives power to the faint. When you can't go on any further, he gives you power. He increases the strength of the weak. Man, when you've reached a point you can't go on, he gives you power. When you no longer have strength, he gives you strength. This says, even youths grow tired and weary. Young men stumble and fall. So it's not an issue of, only old people are weak and faint. No, even youths, even when you're young and you're strong, will eventually grow tired. You eventually grow weary. You eventually stumble and fall. But those that wait upon the Lord, now we have a condition. See, yes, God gives power to the faint. He gives strength to the weak, but there's a condition for this. Those that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up like wings, like eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. See, the power to the faint, when God gives us endurance and strength, it comes because we wait upon him. And because we wait upon him, there's more that we can suddenly go. And it's not because of us, it's because he's giving us the power and the strength to go on. He's renewing our strength. Now, let's look at some of this in action. We're going to look over into the book of Mark, chapter 1. Get my computer here moving a little bit. Mark chapter 1, verses 29 through 39. It says, as soon as Jesus and his companions had left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed with a fever, and they promptly told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her by the hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to serve them. Then evening after sunset, people brought to Jesus all who were sick and demon-possessed, and the whole town gathered at the door. And he healed many who were ill with various diseases and drove out many demons. But he would not allow the demons to speak because they knew who he was. And early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and slipped out to a solitary place to pray. Simon and his companions went to look for him. And when they found him, they said, everyone is looking for you. But Jesus answered, let us go on to the neighboring town so I can preach there as well, for that is why I've come. So he went throughout Galilee, preaching in the synagogues and driving out demons. We're going to see some strength renewed here, and we're going to see it in some ministry context, and then we're going to begin talking about calling. And so here it begins. Jesus' companions, they leave the synagogue. Talked about this last week. Jesus went there to teach with authority, cast out some demons. So this is after that. They've left that, and they're going to go to the home of Simon and Andrew. And of course, this is Simon, who's going to be later Peter. But he's just Simon here. His name hasn't really been changed yet. And so, and I often ask, like on Sunday, I ask this, why did they go to this house? Why did they go there? And it's funny because this is like a really simple answer, but we want to make it really complicated. Like, it's the God, he's so much picking Peter. Jesus went out, he taught with authority, he drove out demons. What do you do when you go to work and it's the end of the day from work? You go home. It's a simple question. You go home. Why do you go home? Why don't you go out somewhere else? Well, you go home because you're tired and you want to relax, and it's the end of the day. You've worked. Jesus is traveling in ministry. He doesn't have a home. So he's staying wherever the Spirit is leading him to stay. And so he's calling disciples. He's there in the town that Simon and Andrew and James live in. Let's go stay with Peter. He's going, quote, home at the end of the day. That's why they go there. When people go home, you worked a hard day, you want to relax. See, he's going there because he's worked, he's taught, he's cast out demons. This is what you do. You're going to go, and in this culture, he's going to go there. He's going to relax. He's going to eat a meal. He'll probably teach later that night because people are going to expect that of him. But this is his moment to rejuvenate himself, and so they go there. I mean, it's common. This isn't like, this is so simple that we overlook the whole reason why they're there. They get there, and we see Simon's mother-in-law is sick in bed with a fever. His mother-in-law, that's his wife's mother. In this time, families live together. It's not like, you have just one man and one woman and no one else is in their home, brothers and cousins and uncles and People lived together. His families were large, and they lived together. And so she's sick in bed. Now, this is interesting because, what would that matter? Well, because she's sick in bed, there's not food prepared. There's nothing. I know we can say, well, that was Peter's wife's job, but Peter's wife isn't the matriarch of the house. Her mother is. Yes, she's moved in, and Simon / Peter is the man. He's the one providing for the household, but it's the women's, and in this culture, in this time, you give honor to those older ones, and so yeah, the mother was sort of the one running that kitchen back there, and so, but she's sick in bed. Therefore, things are not done the way they would normally be done, and that's what I think we need to understand. It's not that Peter's wife couldn't do it or this or that, and no, it's that things were not done the way they would normally be done. And I say that because it says she's sick in bed, and they, who's they? Simon, Andrew, James, John. That's who he went with. They promptly told Jesus about her. Now, you read through the gospel messages, and we see the disciples are often concerned with food. Like when Jesus multiplied all the bread and they had all the leftovers, and then they get in the boat and they go across, and then they start arguing. And Jesus said about leaven, and of course, Jesus talking about leaven of the Pharisees. He's talking about teaching. And they think Jesus is mad at them because they forgot to bring the bread. Oh no, we forgot to bring the bread. What are we going to eat? And Jesus rebukes them. He's like, going, did you not see me just multiply bread? And you're like worried about you forgot the bread. Like, come on, guys. They had this. And so again, you got to think James and John, Simon and Andrew, they think Jesus may be the Messiah. They bring the Messiah to their home. And oh no, my mother-in-law's sick. Things are not being prepared properly. We're so sorry, Messiah. We have not laid out the table. We don't have the food. We're not ready for you. That's probably what they told him. I have my doubts. They said, oh, she's really sick. Please heal her. I think they were probably more concerned about having Jesus the Messiah and things not being proper and coming up with an excuse. And so let's make the excuse. You see this, even at the wedding when they didn't have wine. This is one of Jesus' first miracles. So that was before this happened because he's already cast out demons at this point. They were like, oh no, let's go tell Jesus we ain't got no wine because he'll do something. They're upset about how it looks. Jesus did the miracle because he's concerned about the people. So Jesus goes in and he takes her by the hand and he helps her up. And when he helps her up, the fever leaves her, she's healed, and she begins to serve. She just gets up and starts doing her job. Now, Jesus didn't heal her to do her job, but it's what she did. I need something from my throat there. Excuse me. But understand this. Jesus healed her and she performed her job. Listen, there's something about our calling that when you're called to do something, that you're supposed to do, God has a way of strengthening you. Yeah. When you think you've reached the end of your strength, he gives you endurance. He gives you strength to go on. Again, little thing, but that was that matriarch's calling. That was the mother-in-law's calling, is to do this. And Jesus equipped her. He didn't rebuke her. He didn't say, go back to bed. No. He lifts her up, the fever leaves, and she just begins to serve the way that she would normally do. Then it says after sunset, after they've eaten, after they've relaxed, after sunset, the next day in the Jewish calendar, now because everyone in town has already done that. See, they finished their work, whatever they're doing, fishermen, trading, whatever their things are. At the end of the day, they've all gone home, they've all eaten, they've had that time, and now suddenly they're in this evening time where they have disposable free time, really. Now they're bringing all the sick to Jesus because he's there. And the whole town, they're gathered in the door. And he's healing them and casting out demons. How long this goes on, doesn't say. But verse 35, we see it early in the morning, while it's still dark. When does the sun come up? Well, I guess it depends. Is it the winter? Is it the spring? sometimes at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun comes up. Or we'll just throw it about 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. The sun comes up. You know, I don't know if it's winter, it may be later, maybe at closer to 7. But the point is, it's early. It's early in the morning. If you'd gone to bed early, getting up at 5 or 6 isn't that big of a deal. If you'd been up late into the night, healing people and casting out demons, your body's probably tired. But Jesus gets up and he slips out. No one notices him. He slips out because they're all sleeping. It's still dark outside. The sun hasn't come up. And Jesus goes to pray. He goes to pray because what? It says, those that wait upon the Lord, he renews their strength. When you wait upon the Lord, I've seen this in my life. I've heard many testimonies, from men far, far greater than me that have talked about ministry way long into the night and having to get up the next day, and they get up and they still spend time with the Lord. I would ask, why would you do that? The Lord gives you your strength. He helps you to move on. Some of the greatest moves of God I've seen and where God moves in power is sometimes when I'm be honest, I've been ill and I'm weak and I don't have a lot in me to work, and I just do what he's called me to do, and he strengthens me to be there and do it. And then God moves in his power because I'm weak. And when I'm weak, he is strong and he displays himself. And he can help pick me up and get me where I need to be because that's part of my calling. He's called me to do these things. Therefore, he will strengthen and empower to do and accomplish what needs to be done. Jesus knows this, and that's why he goes out to pray. He's seeking to be strengthened from the Lord. Now, yes, Jesus is God. He's God, but he's doing this as a man. He's the example of how you and I should be doing this. He's humbling himself and walking like we should be walking. And of course, Simon's companions, they went to look for him. Why? They wake up, he's gone. Oh no, where's he gone? They find him and say, everyone's looking for you. No, everyone's not looking for him because everyone else is in their homes. Everyone else went home. So only those in the house that woke up and realized he ain't here. Where did he go? Oh, we got to find him because when everyone else comes looking for him, we don't know where he's at, and then we won't look good. So they're out, everyone's looking for you. And when he hears us, he's like going, well, we got to go to this next town because there's more work, there's more preaching that I have to do. And he goes and he's driving out demons and he's advancing the kingdom. And you're seeing it because he waited upon the Lord. And we're seeing some of this calling, a little bit of calling. Jesus is going where he's called. He's helped the Simon's mother-in-law because of just the calling of who she is in her home. God has strengthened her, built her up. Now we're going to get to we're going to really look at calling and where does this come in? What are we talking about? So we're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to look at verses 16 through 23. 1 Corinthians 9, 16 through 23. This is Paul speaking. He says, and when I preach the gospel, I have no reason to boast because I am obligated to preach. Woe to me if I do not preach the gospel. If my preaching is voluntary, I have a reward. But if it's not voluntary, I am still entrusted with responsibility. What then is my reward? That in preaching the gospel, I may offer it free of charge, so not to use up my rights in preaching it. Though I am free of obligation to anyone, I make myself a slave to everyone to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I become like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, though I myself am not under the law, to win those under the law. To those without the law, I became like one without the law, though I am not outside the law of God, but I am under the law of Christ, to win those without the law. To the weak, I became weak to win the weak. I have become all things to all people so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel so that I may share in its blessings. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way to take the prize. It's verse 24. I should have stopped before that, but it's okay. We're going to stop right there. A lot to do in calling here, and we're going to talk about the strengthening part in just a minute. But in this, Yes, there's a lot about calling in this, but we're going to see there's two types of callings that we're looking at, or two types of people. I don't want to say callings, yeah, but there's two types of people, okay? Because he's talking about preaching and ministry. And we're going to see that we're going to have those that are called and those that desire. Those that are called to ministry, those that desire to be in ministry. Desiring to be in ministry and being called to ministry are not the same thing. They're not the same. And let's get into this. He says, when I preach the gospel, I have no reason to boast because I'm obligated. Paul's like, I don't go around bragging, saying I'm a minister or this or that. I have no reason to do that because I'm obligated. I have to do this. In other words, I did not choose to do this. God called him. He didn't pick it. Well, to me, if I don't preach the gospel, if my preaching is voluntary, here's that desire part. If my preaching is voluntary. See, Paul preaches not because he wants to. He's obligated to. He has to. It's not a I chose to do this. You have people that have chosen to be in ministry because they desire to be in ministry. They desire to stand up and preach and teach. That is their desire. That's what they want, And notice Paul says, if I preach voluntarily, I have reward. There are people that when they desire to be in ministry, and they've chosen that themselves, they have a reward. Their reward is having everyone that listens to them tell them what a good preacher they are. Their reward is when they ask you to give your money in the offering plates and they get big salaries from it. And they say, hey, I'm a CEO of a corporation here and I should be paid like a CEO. You see, they're getting their reward. That's what they desire and that's what they're getting. Paul is saying, I didn't choose this. God called me to this, and now I'm obligated. I have a responsibility. He says, but if it's not voluntary, I am entrusted with a responsibility. In other words, God called you and said, here, I've called you. I've put this ministry upon you. Now you are responsible to do this. And if you're responsible to do it, then you have to do it regardless of anyone saying that was a very good sermon and message. You have to do it regardless if anyone puts any money in an offering plate. You have to do it regardless if you get a paycheck. You have to do it because God has called you to do it, and you were obligated to the creator of the universe. There is no choice. It's not voluntary. You've been enlisted in God's army. When you've been, enlisted, when you've been, I guess not maybe not enlisted, but when you've been, when the draft happens, you've been scripted. I guess that's the word scripted I'm looking for. And you get that letter in the mail saying Uncle Sam says you're going to show up on this date. You don't get to say no. You don't get that. You either go serve or they throw you in prison. But your freedom to do what you want to do is over with. That's sort of what a calling to ministry is. God has called you to do this. It's not a voluntary thing. And there's a lot of men. There's a lot of good men in ministry. I like them. But they're not called. They desire it. They desire it. Paul says, though I am free of obligation to anyone, I make myself a slave to everyone. Here we go again. Because Paul is called and he's got this responsibility to do this, now he's like, he's not obligated to anyone. His obligation is to God. So he doesn't have to do anything to anyone. But, here's the but. But because he is obligated to God, not to men, he's not obligated, he's free from men. But because he's obligated to God, and what's he obligated to God? He's obligated to take the gospel message. What's the gospel message? It's what we saw Jesus doing. Preaching the kingdom, casting out demons, telling people that they can be saved from their sin. They can know their God. They can be reconciled I mean, I could go on and on with this about what's the gospel. It's a great thing. But he's obligated to tell people this because that's his responsibility God has given him. And because of that, he makes himself a slave to everyone. He doesn't have to be. He chooses to do it so that he can win them. So he doesn't put himself under obligation to people. He's obligated to God. So anything he does for people is just like Jesus when Jesus came and became a man, when Jesus put on clothing and he humbled himself. And though he was the creator of the universe, he put that stuff aside and became a man and walked with us and ate and did the things with us to do. He humbled himself to win us. And now when he calls you, the calling is you got to humble yourself and become lower than the other people to win them. And Paul has that. Now, those that desire ministry, that want that, they're doing this for the reward of what they see. They are obligated to people. Why? Because if they want to get the reward, then they're obligated to that job. They're obligated. They're not called by God. There's no obligation with God. So therefore, their obligation to receive the word is with people. That's why so many are motivational preachers. That's why they want to tickle the ears. That's why they, but the funny thing about this is that because they desire the ministry, because they desire the rewards, they don't like the obligation. They hate the idea of people controlling them. You see this? And so what happens is that they're technically under the obligation. They have to serve, but because they're not called, they're not humbling themselves. They're constantly trying to break away from that obligation. And so instead of being the servants in the church, they rise up and they get people to serve them. They don't want people to come and serve them. They want to put distance between everyone. They want to make distance. And I'll train these few leaders, and you can't come talk to me. You got to talk to my secretary. Talk to they put distance. They do not want to be obligated to men. They hate the idea of submitting themselves to boards and the elders and things. Because why? Because they desire the ministry, they desire the reward, but they don't like the obligation that comes from that. But if they were called of God, they are free from the obligation, and therefore they willingly submit to that. We see they're not, so now they are, and they don't like that. They don't like that obligation that comes with that. That's why Paul says, I can preach the gospel for free. And they can't. Because if they preached it for free, if they gave of themselves for free, they would not receive the reward they wanted. And this, of course, gets into the whole act of why does this really matter? What's it have to do with strength? Strengthening. Listen, to submit yourself to others, to be, when Paul says, I became like a Jew, I became like those under the law, I became like those without the law, I became like those without or whatever it took to win people. Listen, to humble yourself it breaks you. You don't have the strength. See, you think that that's a weak move, but it's actually a very strong move, and it's almost beyond human strength. And that's where God gives you power. That's where you become weak to do this, and he empowers and strengthens you. When you chase after the desire, when you chase after, well, this is what I want. When you chase after that sort of stuff, you're not waiting for the Lord. You're doing it yourself. You want your own reward, and you're doing your own strength. And there's no power of God. But when you follow the Lord and you wait upon him, he calls you. And when he calls you, he strengthens you to do the job, the responsibility that he's given you, so that you can win as many as possible. Father, I thank you, Lord, for this message today, God, that we can hear about how you strengthen those that are called, God. And Father, in some ways, we're all called, maybe not to some vocation or professional ministry, but you've given all of us a calling, even like Peter's mother-in-law was called to run that house, God, and you empowered and strengthened her, God. You lifted her up and healed her so that she could serve. And Father, I pray right now that whoever's watching this, God, that you've given them a calling to do something, Lord. And Father, I pray, God, that they would be responsible to the calling that you've given them, God. They wouldn't chase after someone else's calling or some other calling that they think is glitzy or the grass is green on the other side, God. But they would be faithful to the responsibility that you've given them, God, and that they would feel your strengthening and your empowering to do and be faithful to what you call them to do. Lord, we thank you for this in Jesus' name. Well, we thank you for checking out this message and this teaching today. Check out our other teachings on our website, www.christianimpact.net. And until next time, God bless.